everybody, I'm Sarah and I'm a recorder player. I hope you are all having a nice day. If my voice has gone a bit, it's because I was singing karaoke last night and I was a little bit too enthusiastic. Today we are starting on a journey into something that isn't the easiest on the recorder, and we are starting to look at dynamics. In this video, I'm going to show you a lot of different ways in which you can play soft on the recorder or give the impression that you are playing soft. Now, dynamics on the recorder, often people say, oh, the recorder has a really limited range of dynamics, we can't do very much. Well, actually you can. It just depends in what kind of range of acceptable sound you are thinking. For example, we can play incredibly soft and incredibly loud. It just depends, would you want to use this in your piece of music? What we perceive as an acceptable, beautiful sound, in that case, the range of dynamics that a recorder has is indeed smaller than an instrument like the piano or the saxophone, but that doesn't have to limit us. There are many ways in which we can give the impression of playing loud and soft. And the first step is to rethink. We are not looking at loud and soft, we are looking at more and less. With the recorder, a lot of dynamics is actually giving the suggestion that something is happening, whilst the volume of the sound actually isn't changing at all. I'm going to give you lots of different tips and hints and ways to use this on your recorder. There'll be a lot of musical examples, and these are just to show you the possibilities. It's very possible that you will disagree with it from an interpretive point of view, but that's okay. There is no one single way to do anything. First thing we're going to do is give the impression of playing soft by varying the volume. So we're affecting the dynamics by the amount of air that we're blowing. Now, first let's just listen to the recorder. What happens if you blow softer without doing anything else? Pitch drops. With the recorder, the more you blow, the higher the pitch, the less you blow, the lower the pitch. So these are often called Titanic endings. You get to an end of a phrase, da da la la da da. So how can we blow less, i.e. play a note softer, without the pitch dropping? The starting point for this is alternative fingerings. Great thing about the recorder, you can play each note in about 1,000 different ways. So an alternative fingering, the fingering itself gives a tone that's slightly higher. You compensate for the tuning by blowing slightly less, and that actually makes a softer note. You can use alternative fingerings whenever you like, but just be aware they do change the colour of the sound. So think, do you want to have that extreme change? Say for example, in this phrase, we want to make the last note softer. We replace the last A with an alternative fingering. It sounds really unnatural at the end. So an alternative has to be really carefully placed. Sometimes with an alternative fingering, the change in colour is as extreme as the change in pitch, so that doesn't actually make it any less noticeable. So you can use these if you want, or it could be very effective in an echo passage. A way to blow less and change your fingers to compensate is, instead of using alternative fingering, is to leak the holes. For example, if you very slightly leak air from one of the holes, the pitch rises. and you compensate for this by blowing less. This is a really nice way to make a diminuendo. Just remember to stop the note before it goes and drops off at the end. Now you can leak almost any finger actually. You could choose to leak the lowest finger. But what I prefer to do actually is leak finger number 1. This was also mentioned by Ganassi, so it's a technique that's been around since the 16th century. What I do is I very slightly roll finger 1 down. So at the top of the hole, it's leaking a tiny, 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 tiny bit. If I do this without changing my breath pressure, you can really go extreme with a very tiny amount of breath pressure, so you can play it very soft. The great thing about leaking finger number 1 is that you can use it with almost any note. If you get this one practiced, you automatically have a kind of leaking finger that you can use all over the place. So in order to practice this one, I would practice it on a C, making sure you have a good hand position. And then what you're actually doing is you're kind of pressing the finger into the recorder in order to roll it downwards, and it's a very, very, very tiny amount. Because of course you can decrescendo and then you can crescendo again. When you're leaking your fingers, don't forget you can also leak the thumb hole. This can be really effective in the high notes. The more you open the thumb hole, the higher the note is going to be. So if I open the thumb hole a tiny, tiny bit, strong sound. If I open the thumb hole a lot and blow quite thinly, it's a very weak sound. So in general, those are the ways to alter your fingers in order to enable you to blow less and still be in tune. Because of course, that's the really important thing. We want to be able to play soft and in tune. That's kind of the whole point, actually. The other way that the amount you blow can affect your dynamics is, of course, vibrato. Vibrato is basically this. Vibrato is actually its own whole video subject, so that will come one day. But basically, if you imagine your beautiful in tune sound as being a straight line, and then with vibrato you're blowing slightly over, slightly under, slightly over, slightly under. And the amount you blow over and under should be equal to each other. So the impression you get is of the tone in tune. Now, of course, you can vary the intensity of the vibrato. In the beginning, it can be very wide, wow, 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 wow. And then if you decrease the amount from which you deviate from the in tune sound, it sounds like a decrescendo, but you're actually still just blowing the same all the time. Let's see if I can do that. With vibrato, you can affect the intensity of the waves you're making, but you can also affect the speed. If you slow down your vibrato, it could give the impression of a decrescendo, that you're getting softer. And you can combine the two. Reduce the intensity of the vibrato and reduce the speed, but we're still blowing the same amount. Another way of changing the intensity of the sound is with the tone colour. In my last video, How to Sound Good on a Soprano, we talked a lot about tone colour in relation to airspeed and a little bit in relation to the shape of your mouth. So that could be worth checking out, even if you're playing an alto. If you think of fast air, that's blowing cold, and slow air that's blowing warm. These can have quite a big effect on your tone colour and the perception of the dynamics. Now, as you can hear, the pitch also changes slightly, so this could be a place where you leak one of your fingers, or even when you take an alternative fingering. So experiment with it, and at the end of the day, pick the sound that you want to hear. Don't forget, when you have more or less, with the recorder, this translates really well to long and short. If you play a note shorter, you have less sound. I'm going to play two phrases, the exact same volume and blowing intensity, but one with longer notes and one with staccato notes, and you will hear the difference in dynamic. The second one felt a lot softer, even though I was blowing the same. I was just playing shorter. It was less sound reaching our ears. Of course, it doesn't have to be as cut and dry as that. I'm just going to try a few different ways to show you how the length of the notes can affect the feel of a phrase. Notice that I'm already doing the next one a little bit, and that is timing. You can give the impression of a note being shorter by delaying it slightly. If you play a note slightly early, it's going to sound louder. If you play a note slightly later, it's going to sound a bit softer. So if you place a note a little bit late to give the impression of it being softer, make sure you continue on in time, otherwise it will sound like you've just gotten out of the bar. And of course, with dynamics, everything is relative. It seems quite obvious, but if you want to make an echo, make sure the notes before are quite strong, so that the notes afterwards have a better chance of having the character of an echo. I'm going to try and give that echo character with one of our favourite passages from Telemann's Fantasia number 7. The first time I play the phrase, I'm going to play all of the notes quite long, a lot of them slurred onto one another with quite a strong articulation. The second time, I'm going to do a little bit with timing to pull it back, and I'm going to use a light articulation staccato. So this is what it's going to sound like. Think of articulation as the start of the note, and then your choice whether to play a note long or short is the end of the note. Some soft articulations can be the diddle articulation, or or even n. In these cases, the tongue is not giving any force or pressure at all. It's just a light stroke. You can even begin a long note without any articulation at all, just if you want to play a very low, soft note, sometimes I find that it helps me to stabilize myself a bit. I put my teeth together, and sometimes I even rest the recorder on my front teeth. So I have my recorder there just resting on my front tooth, my teeth together, and I go like this. I don't know if anyone else does this, and I really don't recommend letting your teeth come into contact with the recorder. I've seen a lot of bitten recorders in my time. Turn around. Which brings us to contemporary music. The first one is obviously that you can just blow less and let the pitch change. Maybe in the context, that sounds fine. Another way I like to give the impression of playing softer in contemporary music is by turning my recorder to the side and blowing half of the air outwards. So then we get... If you do that without changing the fingers, the pitch does drop. But if you're a bit practiced with the old finger one, that's no problem to leak that first finger in combination with the movement to the side. For effect, you can do this with your hands and arms, or with your head. And then of course, we have spacing. The closer you are to your audience, the louder you will appear. So maybe if there's a piece where you want to have a soft section, you could just turn around and play to the back of the room. Or you could walk away and play at the back of the stage. Now, this might not be appropriate for every piece, but it's there as an option. And if you're playing a contemporary piece, a piece with a music theatre aspect, this is also a really, it's actually the most obvious way. The closer you are, the louder you will sound, so go further away. When I was doing my research for this video, I came across a book by Johannes Fischer called The Dynamic Recorder, in German, die dynamische Blockflöte. Unfortunately, I cannot speak German, so I could not read the book. But if one of you has and you liked it, please tell me about it. Maybe it's worth me buying it anyway and getting my German friends to translate it. Or Johannes, maybe you could get an English translation done. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my video on how to play soft. If you did, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can do this by clicking my recorder. Have a lovely day. Bye.